Welcome to Legacy Unscripted, sponsored by Progeny Coaching. This is the podcast where sports and business collide. I'm your host, Russ Katzman, and here we'll skip the fluff and get straight to the hustle. From athletes turned entrepreneurs to impact-driven business leaders, we'll dive into the wins, the lessons, and yes, some of those failures that make our legacies worth living. Today, I'm happy to welcome David Holt, founder and CEO of Holt Law. David, good to see you again. Talk to me about why are you here? What drove you to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. What drove me to be an entrepreneur? Well, really probably stubbornness and wanting to work for myself right out of the gates. I had worked as an attorney and as a law clerk with a number of other organizations, including the government, and it just did not appeal to me. And so there's just kind of I don't know if it's the pickiness or the selectiveness that drove me to say, hey, I want to kind of design my own day, design my own destiny. Sure. And so that what drove me to starting my own firm or own practice right out of the gate.
Now, I think it's interesting because from a lawyer's perspective, you're very highly trained in the law. You find different specialties along the way. But the one thing they don't necessarily do during law school is teach you a whole lot about running your own firm. So give me an idea of that journey from not being just a lawyer, but to actually running your own firm and some of the things that tripped you up along the way.
Yeah. No, it's a tough one. They don't teach you about that in law school at all, but they are getting a lot better. I will say I graduated from what is now Mitchell Hamlin up in Minnesota in St. Paul, and they've added almost a whole MBA wing to their law school, merging with basically a business school. And I think that's kind of on the right track. I would like to see a lot more experiential learning. And back in the day, we used to have apprenticeships in the practice of law, and it was this very methodical process. But I was self-taught. It's not the best way to do it. I read a lot of business books. I eventually wised up and got business coaches and those who had already done it. And I'm a big fan of the EOS model, so I don't want to have to, figure out everything from scratch. I like models that can be replicated and duplicated and facilitate growth. But admittedly, right out of the gate, I can't say I was the most efficient business owner. I was, as an attorney, really, you should be doing legal work. In a perfect world, only legal work, or if you're going to take more of the business owner role, high-level business decision-making. I was sending out invoices, answering every single phone call, and getting back to it. I was doing all this administrative work that just seems to add up throughout the day. And really, probably if you look back, only maybe 20 to 30% of my day was actually doing legal, true value work. And so I learned by fire. I can't say that that's the right way to do it. One thing I would have done differently right out of the gate is I would have sought more business mentors as opposed to attorney mentors. Gotcha. I don't want to, give a bad rep to the profession, but I can't say that there's a lot of great business owners in the lawyers field. There's a lot of fantastic attorneys, but there's a big difference between the two. So a lot of mine was learned by fire, really, right out of the gate.
Well, and I think what happens when you're a lawyer, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because clearly I'm not, but I think the thing I found when I'm working with lawyers is they get into the profession because they want to help something come to what's right? Whether it's an individual who's, but suffered a liability, whether it's somebody who's in a contract that they've been wrong, they want to get to the point of where they are doing right. And sometimes what you're doing right isn't necessarily the most profitable venture. Right? It may not be the best thing for the business, but it's the best thing for the practice of law. How do you create that balance amongst those two? What do you do in those times when you reach a point of where, man, I really should be doing this for the sake of the client, and I've taken an oath to do this for the sake of the client, but man, that's really not the best place for my business.
Yeah, that's tough. Well, and I mean, I think a lot of industries, I would argue, struggle with this, including the healthcare system. One approach that I have taken, if I'm taking your prompt here, is that I will have a pretty large amount of pro bono or low bono work that is, I'll just say, subsidized by work that's much more profitable and very easy for clients to pay.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I think all attorneys want to make a difference, right? And help those who may not have the financial ability to engage a good attorney and get good legal work. I think, even though there is not a requirement to do so, I do heavily judge my colleagues that are in financial positions to certainly have themselves and all of their workforce or staff provide some low bono or pro bono work, or, work in between on their prices. Now, the rub of that is if you get on the other side of the spectrum, you're going to run yourself out of business, and then you can't help anyone. So there's always going to be the friction between profiting so you can stay in business, and not just stay in business, but also provide better legal services. So as I've grown my firm from beyond me to, I should really know these, 20 something staff, is I've been able to provide way better legal advice and legal services quicker, faster, better value, more expansive, catching, all these little add-on things that we've, that's kind of ancillary to law. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I would have stayed kind of in the same lane and not at least look to how we could grow and profit. So it's always a rub. Not easy to navigate, but I think you got to profit first, but always remember, the original motivation. And there are a lot of people who are not in the financial position to pay for high quality legal services. And that's just a fact of the market.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned something earlier about this struggle for yourself even to figure out how to get past only being able to do 20 or 30% of true legal work during the day and doing all of this administrative stuff. Now you've reached a point, you've got 20 something employees. My guess is you're out of all that admin stuff. What was that kicker for you to make that transition? Because I see a lot of attorneys who end up stuck in that, how do I get myself out of the business stuff so I can do more law work that's going to be where I truly add value?
Yeah. Well, I think through reading some of the business books, entrepreneur books, I really shifted my mindset from, I'm not an attorney. I happen to be an attorney, but I'm actually a business owner first. And so when you think of the practice of law as a business,
Sure,
right? The business being delivering legal services, it changes your approach to your planning and your day and your hiring just like that, because you realize, the service that you're delivering, the widget, the professional service is legal advice. Everything else, I would argue, I get, pretty aggressive on this. You have an ethical duty, I would even say, to delegate that. It is not, in my opinion, I'm sure some lawyers would disagree, but it's not, in my opinion, ethically compliant to bill somebody for non-legal work. But I can guarantee you there are lawyers doing that. They're billing for all the administrative, email-y, putting the file together, putting, files and stuff that is not legal work. Now, it's a very fluid concept as, what is legal work? Okay, fine. But I think, I go one step further, that you should be a good business owner if you're going to run your own practice and firm. You have an ethical duty if you really read deeply into the ethics rules and competence. And I would argue you're overbilling, especially if you're using an hourly model, on providing anything that's not legal advice at your, very generous hourly rates to the client, period. How I kind of came to that realization, really, it was just reading all, entrepreneur business books and realizing, okay, I need to stop looking to the profession as it's always been done, with what I think is a kind of an outdated, hourly model and a very, slow, methodical, kind of rigid structure, and really have adopted more of I would consider it a startup, bootstrap, business owner, profit first type model. And that's worked very well. I don't put the ethics rules to the side. They're right there. In fact, they're really in the forefront. But it's a very different mindset that I adopted to get into that growth pattern. And what that has enabled me to do is, I would say right now, I'll admit, in true EOS fashion, being the visionary, if you read, Traction and some of the books, really my job as the business owner now is to drive, the vision of the firm. So I don't do as much legal work as you would expect, but everything is very high, high decision-making authority, high level activities, but none of it, I can tell you, is, troubleshooting a software or trying to get one little letter on an email or a name changed on a document. That's just not an efficient use of my time.
Well, and I think the important thing for you, I mean, that was a process that you had to get through, right? You didn't just wake up one morning and say, you know what, today I'm going to be high level in the business. I'm just going to hire people to do everything else. I'm going to be high level. You had to work your way through the business, build some processes, and through EOS and otherwise, and we'll talk a little more about EOS in a minute, but build some processes and become efficient in that processes. Hire people to kind of take over those processes, then you could back out, right? I think the important thing for entrepreneurs to understand as they come into this is you're not going to flip a switch and be nothing but high level for your business all the time. At some point, you've got to get your fingernails dirty and get in and work. Do the work that your business is going to provide. Do the value proposition that you have put out there. And then figure out the nuts and bolts of it. Teach that to somebody else, and then you can start to back out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk to me,
100%.
Talk to me about the EOS structure. We've mentioned that a couple times. For those not familiar with it, give me an idea of how you implemented EOS in a law firm.
Yeah, so EOS, entrepreneurial operating system, is really a way to break apart how to run a company, how to manage issues. There are quarterly goals and rocks under the assumption that we are very good at humans on 90-day goal setting, but anything longer or shorter, doesn't as efficiently assist with moving the business along. It's also a really good way to deal with overwhelm, which I think is the number one, burnout / why businesses don't work, is that there's 100 things to do, sometimes thousands, and you really got to dig down into and set goals around those things that matter most. So the EOS, and there's books, there's trainers, there's integrators now, there's all sorts of consultants. It's been around for quite a while, but has really gotten popularized, especially among attorneys in the last 5 years. And I think it's out of necessity, really, because lawyers can actually, in my opinion, get away with being very bad business owners because they have a very high professional service rate. Sure. And so even if they're only doing maybe an hour or two of productive labor a day, that can still be, hundreds. You might even hit 1,000 with those 2 hours of billables per day, and that's enough to sustain you and have you kind of dork around the other 6 hours or whatever you're doing per day. And so I think there's been less pressure on law firms and lawyers to do it. But where I've used it to implement and what we've done with our firm is there's a number of innovative things. First one is we totally rethought about the sales process, which is really what the initial relationship with a prospective client should be. Right. I always thought of it as, when I first opened my practices, I want to pick up the phone and wow them and maybe even give a little free legal advice and this and that. And it's like you're chasing them down. Really, under the EOS model, there's a whole sales and marketing wing to the company. And the attorneys really, in my opinion, shouldn't be that involved in that. We have our packages. The benefit being from our firm is we largely only do flat fee refundable packages, which is pretty unique in the practice of law. Sure. It makes it a lot easier for our sales team. But our intake sales specialists are not attorneys. These are trained sales professionals that can really, well, first off, screen answer questions, and move a client into a decision-making ability, which really, I mean, people get kind of hung up on sales. I have completely changed my relationship with sales. If I did not like sales, or I was nervous about, saying things are salesy, we would have been gone, years ago. But I really reframed and changed my mindset around that. When I was young, I thought sales people, they're trying to trick you. It's like fraud. They're trying to hide like a lemon car and sell it to you. And so I think a lot of people grow up with that mindset. So that's one thing, is the intake sales specialist. And for example, right now we have a director of HR, so human resources, a director of operations. You rarely see this in law firms, but I have a whole wing of our law firm that's only dedicated to effectively the user experience and the software that surrounds the onboarding, the offboarding, the actual, projects. A lot of what can be automated. We have the internet, we got AI, we got all sorts of fun stuff and tools that we're using. And I'm not the most tech savvy individual. I know enough to keep up and get summarized, but I don't know how to build out these beautiful, workflows that the director of operations can do. And so really what this has enabled is, people are in charge of their areas. They can take the absolute ownership. One thing I like about the EOS model is we have L10s, or, leadership meetings. So once a week, I'll meet for 90 minutes with the directors, HR, operations, and then I have an integrator, and that there'll probably be more that join the leadership team as we continue to grow. And what we do is we do a number of things in that 90 minutes, but one of my favorite that takes up most of the meeting is IDS. So we do issue spotting, discussion, and solution-based thinking. And it's just, and this is also used outside of the L10 as well, but what's fun is that you come into the meeting and there's all sorts of stuff that's popped up throughout the week. There's, stuff is starting to, light on fire, and this is broken, and this, this opportunity came over, and do we give it time? And what's fun is I didn't used to think this is fun, but now I do. You got 100, maybe 1,000 things, not 1,000, but a lot of things that come into that meeting, but purposely you have to whittle it down. You have to identify what the actual issue is, which is actually a really difficult thing to do. Usually you're looking at symptoms and not the actual issue. And so that in and of itself is hard. Then you discuss, and then you solve. So there's action that's actually taken. We don't just kind of talk about it. It's not therapy. Maybe it is, but we need to take action. And the person who brings in the issue is generally tasked with already trying to bring what they think about it, discussing it, and a pre-proposed solution, which I love because it makes all of my staff entrepreneurs in the organization, right? They need to think about, well, I don't just, press the fire alarm. I actually think about, why did that fire start in the first place? And what could I do immediately before we just, let the place burn or what have you? So anyway, that's just a quick preview of the EOS model. I think it really helps have defined roles within the organization. You made mention of SOPs earlier, standard operating protocols. You absolutely need those to scale. And right now, I mean, it's a ways out there, but thinking about selling a law firm, and you walk into some law firms, there is no way that somebody could take over. There's papers everywhere. There's, one paralegal that knows everything, but it's never really written down. And, God forbid, if anything happened to that paralegal, it's a poof, practice would be gone. Whereas the opposite of that would be well-defined standard operating protocols for every little facet of the company. And so if a staff member leaves, if I sell, I'm not around, I'm, out on the beach or retired, somebody can just come in and it's very robotic. That's another core tenet of EOS too.
Yeah, I think the beauty of that, if you look at it in terms of a law firm, is exactly what you said, right? Somebody can take it over. They have a ready-made staff, right? The hardest thing for any investor, and you've been an investor, I mean, the hardest thing for any investor, anybody who wants to come and purchase an organization is, am I buying myself a job? right? If you as the current business owner are involved in day-to-day, in the discussions, having to manage staff, having to micromanage the staff, having to tell them how they need to do things, all a new owner would do would be buying themselves a job. Right, so you've created these structures now, and through the help of EOS, you've created a method for getting everybody involved. Right, you are essentially you are capturing your tribal knowledge along the way, and teaching new skills as well. But you don't end up with somebody getting ready to leave 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, I'm going to leave, or worse yet, you get somebody who now doesn't even give you 2 weeks. They just decide to walk out. And what do we have left? Right? All that knowledge goes with that person. So the methods for capture, even getting them involved in the solutioning, so they're married to the organization in a way that they weren't otherwise. They take ownership of that solution. They take ownership of resolving the issue, and seeing the benefit back to the organization of being able to resolve that issue. And all of that not only further ingrains your employee in the organization, but it further builds up the organization's knowledge and ability to sustain the loss of any single employee. So yeah, I love that. I love that for you. I love that for the firm. And it doesn't, to your point earlier, it doesn't matter what kind of organization you are. And I'm not a EOS implementer. I've worked with a couple different organizations, helped them kind of apply some of the principles, help them execute on some things. But I honestly believe it's a wonderful structure. Anything you can do to build structure and create predictability in your business for as long as possible in the customer's life cycle, the better off you are. So it's good to hear that you're doing that.
The structure really helps, not only with me, but when you bring in new staff, there's a sense of direction. I wouldn't say calmness, you still can set the bar high, but people know where to get information, what their role is, what to do. You can set KPIs or key performance indicators. This is a big thing that we're revamping right now. And so with those, a key performance indicator, you can put numbers on all the staff. And then if they hit the numbers, which would make your organization successful and hit certain revenue metrics, then you can start bonusing your staff. So they know exactly what they need to do, what good looks like and what great looks like, so that you can reward that behavior. And that's all numbers based. It's not, do I like them? Are they a Vikings fan? Do they cold plunge? It's strictly numbers, and everyone's on board and can see each other's numbers for accountability. So structure, you're right on, 100%.
Yeah, I'll ignore that Vikings fan comments. My Packers are back there on the back wall. So I love the structure and stuff that you bring to the table, and what that's doing for you as a law firm. Now, talk to me a little bit about the types of organizations that you work with, and some of the type of work that you do. Do you use that EOS at all, or is that even applicable to the work that you're doing with them? Talk to me about what you do for your clients.
Yeah. So we are the law firm built for healthcare businesses. So we're only working with businesses that are in healthcare. And so we do absolutely, I do tell them, hey, get the EOS. I'll send you the traction book. I'm a big fan. I post blogs and videos about it and show kind of what it looks like talking about it here. I'm very transparent. And, but what we do for the clients, it's really all business law. So we don't litigate. We're transactional. Okay. So what that means is we're setting up a medical spa from nothing. It's a medical doctor. It's some nurses. They have an idea and they want to do, plastic surgery, Botox, microneedling, that kind of stuff. Those are clients we work with. And then they're growing. So we're helping them with hiring staff and maybe expanding to another location, maybe buying another location, buy, sell, merger, or acquisition. And then outside of, a medical spa, which people are more familiar with, we work with a lot of the healthcare licenses that you got to get through the state and the government that you don't really know or hear about. But some of those would be assisted living. People are usually pretty familiar with that. all the way down into ones that don't get as much attention: substance use disorder, mental health, all sorts of housing, supportive housing type licenses. And what we do is we don't just help the providers get the license, but we're also helping them with compliance, growth. I'm big on, there's all sorts of rules in healthcare and just, general FTC, federal law, but in terms of what you can and can't say and do for referrals and fee splitting, and what you can say on an ad and what you can't say about your business. It's really restrictive to healthcare businesses. Most of the time it's justified, but most of the other time it's just a pain in the butt. But what you can do, if you got the right, legal setup and legal advice, is those who know how to navigate those effectively and actually don't shy away from marketing and the correct way to do referrals and that sort of thing, can have a huge competitive advantage in their respective areas, as they should, because it's a very, you went out and sought some very specific advice. So I actually enjoy not just getting a business set up in healthcare, but also, very similar to my journey with growing a law firm to way beyond me. Most of my clients are just a surgeon or a medical professional, and they've never been a business owner, just as I was never a business owner before I did it. And so a lot of the phases of entrepreneurship that they go through are ones that I was, just doing years ago. And so very fun to not just give the legal advice, but to say, oh yeah, okay, well, it seems like you're doing a lot of admin work. What about doing more of the surgeries? Oh yeah, well, I keep getting bogged down in this and that. Okay, well, what about hiring? What about SOPs? What about the EOS model?
Sure.
So it's fun to talk from business owner to business owner in terms of growth. We're not, suing or getting sued. I mean, my clients do have those types of legal actions. Those get referred out. I'm always the hub as the kind of internal fractional legal counsel is what we call it. So kind of have a monthly engagement. We're always doing something of value. So that's high level what we're doing and how the EOS really comes into that as well.
Okay. So you incorporate more business advisory into the legal work that you're doing with them, rather than just strictly legal.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's ancillary and I think necessary to complement good business legal advice.
Well, in doctors, I mean, they're no different than what we talked about with lawyers earlier, right? Doctors, chiropractors, nurses, physicians of all sorts, surgeons. I mean, it's any one of those individuals is highly trained in their area. Again, you don't see too many medical schools with an MBA wing kind of attached onto it saying this is how you're going to run your practice. Right? This is how you run a group. This is who you're going to need to hire to do all the administrative work. This is how you hire somebody. This is the type of interview questions you're going to answer. They don't have that, right? And so incorporating some of that business advisory into the work you're doing with them, I think it's an important step.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and one of the differences that I often highlight with prospective clients is there are many fantastic attorneys out there. There aren't many that have started and run, their law firm. So they've, gone out and been a business owner like what you're going to be. I not only have done that in law, there's a few other, I have a couple of real estate rentals and then an e-commerce business. And I used to have another e-commerce business that, startup failed, learned a lot from that. And I think just having that more entrepreneurial risk, but with the tempered legal view, really gives a unique view of and a unique approach to the legal advice that I give. It's less reactive, it's more proactive and growth focused, which I really think is missing in the legal field. I don't know why there aren't more. There are some. I feel like there's a trend now. There's more pressure to get away from the hourly and more of the value-based, which if you're value-based for a business, I think it's always, you got to have the conversation about how are we going to put enough money into this business? How are we going to make money? But how are we going to put enough money into this business to make it actually pay enough for the owner to, pay for their child care and their food and their shelter, and then from there grow so that it's not just kind of a maybe it'll work. This is a business plan, and there is a path forward to profit.
Right. So that's a terrific segue. You touch base on some of those failures and lessons from the past. Give me your top, 2 or 3 lessons that you learned along the way that, may have occurred years ago, but that you're still applying today.
Yeah. Well, one big failure, I mean, with my startup, not the law firm, but the e-commerce, it was called cutmedicalbills.com. And effectively what we did is me and another entrepreneur, also named David, who had more of the video and tech knowledge. Okay. What we did is we exported my knowledge of how to fight medical bills. You go to the ER. This is before the No Surprises Act and some other legislation has passed. But 10 years ago, it was still pretty bad. It's still bad today, but it was extra bad back then, and even probably worse before that. But you get these big surprise medical bills, and what I would teach people how to do is how to fight them and how to negotiate them down if their backs were up against the wall, and how to file appeals when their insurance was supposed to cover it, but then kind of wiggled out through a weird exception, which was very gray. And so I exported that into a startup. It's called Cut Medical Bills. It didn't work. It failed. But what I learned about that, the biggest lesson that I learned from that startup is that we tried to do everything on our own. We tried to be a jack of about 400 different trades. We should not have done that. We should have had more faith in our underlying product and done what we did well, and exported the rest, and even considered getting outside financing rather than bootstrapping. So a few lessons there. The biggest one being, and I now inject this into some of my conversations with soon-to-be business owners, is you need to reset your mind as to, this isn't just a fun thing for me to leave the hospital job and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but at least I'll be free. You need to wire your mind and truly believe, which may require some reprogramming and a little, subconscious intervention there, but that you're going to succeed, period. That there is a path and you have seen it. And I don't think I really ever had that mindset with that startup. I kind of saw it as just a, fun, cool little thing. And it would have been a bonus if it would have taken off. And it was a fun thing to talk about. It was fun to hang out with the founder, but wasn't something that I actually saw as being successful. So learned some tough lessons there that rolled into other businesses. Yep. And biggest one being hiring the people that are good at what they do, the professionals.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like that last one too. Certainly the jack of all trades is an important lesson. I mean, you try to be everything to everybody, you end up being nothing to anybody. So, I mean, getting clear on what it is that you're going to bring to market, what it is you do well, and who's going to benefit from that. I like to start at the end of that. I like to start with who do we want to help? Who do we want to work with? Because 5 years from now, when you're flooded with clients, you don't want to look at that and say, man, 2/3 of these people I can't stand because I don't want them as clients. Right? I don't like this personality. I don't like the fact that they don't pay me. I don't like the fact that they call me all the time. I don't like, find the people that you want to help based on the type of person that you want to work with. Right? And that's who you should be servicing. And then what are their needs? And then design a value proposition for those needs. The other one, though, I think is interesting because this vision of the future, I think what happens is people come out to become an entrepreneur and they have a vague idea of what they want to do. They have a vague idea of what it's going to be. I'm going to have this kind of freedom, and I'm going to drive this kind of car, and I'm going to live in this kind of place, and I'm going to drink margaritas on the beach after this age, and all of this kind of stuff. That's when they think about creating a vision for the future, that's what the vision that they create, which is all well and good because it gives us, some things to strive for when success comes along. However, I don't think they get crystal clear on what that specific success looks like, on so detailed that they could, describe it for you and you could picture that same success around you. right? I think they need to get so detailed on that it's vivid in their mind. They see it as if it's happened already. They just don't spend nearly enough time creating that vision in their mind so they know where they're headed. And I think because of that, there's a lot of wandering and throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks, and whatever phrase you want to throw at that. There's just a lot of false attempts by entrepreneurs to kind of just make something happen because they have a vague idea of where they want to head.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy to set goals or have a vision or a business plan and write all that down. It's actually a very difficult task. It can be assisted with AI, but I don't think that gets you all the way there. The EOS model and has a vivid vision or a vision that you're supposed to draft, and so I have this on our website, and sometimes my staff will say, I can't believe we put our revenue and all this stuff up on our website. And I say, full transparency, baby. That's what we need, because there's nothing to be ashamed about. We've announced those numbers. We hit those numbers. It's not like we might do it. It is we will do it, and we plan and march together to get there. And yeah, there's going to be issues we haven't even anticipated. There are revenue lines and pivots that we haven't not even thought about that will pop up a year or two from now. But at least you have a general thought of where you want to be, what that looks like, how much you're working, what you're actually doing, what that workforce or the people around you and the clients you're working with. It's interesting. You said how you kind of pick who you want to work with ideally and work your way back. It's interesting. I did it a little bit differently. So why I started a business, this type of law firm, is because the U.S. healthcare system is a piece of garbage, in my opinion, and can use a lot of work. And so my way of making an impact, so impact is what keeps me motivated, is bringing more small healthcare providers into the system, entrepreneurs, really, at the end of the day, because I think that they are going to have the biggest impact on patient outcomes, because they are, the true providers that have more time, remember your name, care. It's more than just 6 minutes. They're still looking to make money, right? Profit first. I get that, but it's not gotten all the way to the degree that it has, I think, with big healthcare. Right. Very similar to big law, where it's very, very fixated almost exclusively on revenue and has really lost sight of the bigger picture. And so my why, and those people take a lot of different forms. Now, fortunately, later in practice, I've been much more selective, and we routinely screen out. In fact, in our core values, in our vision, one of the biggest ones is that we communicate very directly and bluntly with clients. And we often, I had a few the other week where we just cut them off, we give them the refund, and they're on their way. And usually they circle back and they try to, hey, I didn't mean to kind of call the paralegal 8 times and, swear or anything. And it's like, too bad. This is just, I got to protect my staff, and I can be more selective. But it's interesting that I like the way that you put it, where you kind of picture the ideal client and then work your way back as well.
Yeah, the reason I always give my clients is I don't want to build a mousetrap for the land of snakes, right? I don't want to buy something that nobody needs, right? Or I don't want to build something that nobody needs. I want my client to have a need that I can fulfill. It's a whole lot easier selling something when you can identify that client's need, help the client to see that need, and then our customer, and get them to come to you and say, you know what, you've got something I need. You've got something I want in my life that will improve what's going on with me. And so that's where I like to get with it. So a couple more minutes here. Talk to me a little bit. I know we've gone through all these ventures, all these things you've done over the last handful of years. I don't have to tell you how demanding the entrepreneurial lifestyle is. Talk to me about balance. Talk to me about how you find that balance to be able to succeed as an entrepreneur and then to take care of yourself as a person as well.
Yeah, well, it's not easy. And I don't think lawyers are unique in this journey of trading their time for money, and especially doing that right out of the gate, and then neglecting, physical health, mental health, relationships, what have you. I've certainly been there in the terms of, I'm a father to a 7-year-old son. And so by default, right, unless you're going to not be a good father, you have a pretty large chunk of your time that needs to be, as a father. And also on top of that, like most entrepreneurs, I'm sure you have relationships with family, friends that you don't just want to ignore because you're a business owner. You may be a little more intentional with those. I think that's been part of my journey in terms of, I'll start with my relationships, is being very intentional with the time and the people, when you realize that time is a very limited resource and very precious, and becomes even more precious when you're thinking about it in terms of, what its value is and what its value could be when you're building a business. And so unfortunately, there's quite a few friends and even a couple family members that I've purposely left behind, that I would just by default kind of hang out with, and they were part of my life and wasn't really intentional with the relationship. There's others that I spend a lot more time with that I think are very impactful. I forget the saying, but it's like you're a sum of the average of 5 of your friends, 10 your friends, whatever it is, the 10 of the people you hang out with, right? And I looked at my 5 or 10 and did the average, and I was like, what is going, I don't know what this is. I got some good ones, but why am I still kind of hanging out with that one? So that is one thing right there. Lawyers and entrepreneurs, again, trade, I think, time for money. You have to set boundaries. It's very difficult right out of the gate, and you have to still take care of yourself. It's very difficult to do. One thing I've done is I time block. And so my time is accounted for, whether it's hanging out with my son or an intentional, relationship, cold plunging, or working out. It's in the schedule. It's non-negotiable for that to happen, or, lunch with a colleague, traveling, what have you. It's in there. And so that helps solidify it, just like you have a calendar meeting with a client, that's there. In theory, it could be rescheduled, but I think when you're really commit to your time blocking and learn about your energy levels throughout the day, it's a game changer in terms of, okay, I am purposely figuring out when I'm a little bit more tired and when I need a little more me time and when I can get the good workout in, because I get the post-workout high. But hey, every individual is different. I think reflecting on what actually works, I can tell you what didn't work for me is grinding it out, even pre-kid, just grinding it out and resting on, good genes by not eating well because you're rushing meals. You're not really meal prepping or thinking intentionally about what you're eating, neglecting workouts, neglecting mindfulness, and trying to work late into the nights or into the weekends because you're trying to get that hustle advantage. I just don't think that's, the new age way to do it as an entrepreneur. I think there's a wave of being much more mindful. I think being smarter in terms of what you can delegate earlier. I wish I would have hired staff and delegated earlier, because in my law firm's growth, because that in a perfect world works out better for everyone. The market rewards that. You're rewarded with more time and more productive value. And we just have kind of a fear, or I had a fear of actually handing over the reins and not doing things myself, which I guess is kind of the side thing to get over there is, as the entrepreneur, this is your baby. And to delegate and to actually let go, you're kind of, especially if you have your ego kind of tied up in it. My law firm's name is Holt Law, but I got multiple attorneys working under that, that flag. So you got to kind of remove the ego, remove the inability to delegate. And I think that has done wonders, high level, for creating boundaries, really.
That's good. Yeah, and I like the end of that, the creating boundaries. Yeah, the one thing that I'll add to your comments on chunking your time. Yeah, I tell my clients, I said, treat it like a zero-based budget. Everybody tells you create a zero-based budget, give every dollar a job, and I tell them kind of create your time the same way, right? Give every bit of your day a job, even if that is a half hour of just chilling, right? A half hour where I read my book or meditate or go for a walk, or an hour to get a workout in, whatever the case is. The reason I want them to do that is because then it becomes a trade, right? If something's going to pop up and interrupt that hour or interrupt that half hour, you have to consciously say, what's popping up is more important to me than what I'm giving up, right? And at least it forces you to go through that mental exercise rather than just, well, my day's wide open, I'll just take whatever comes. Because then the time flies by, we don't get done half the stuff we want to. I love the idea of chunking time, and I love the idea of forcing that trade. All right, David, I know we need to wrap up. Talk to me, anything left that we haven't touched on that you want to throw out to the listeners before we wrap?
Wow. Well, I got a book coming out. Forgot about that.
That's true.
So the book, I'll give you the preview, and there's a lesson in the preview. Is I almost electrocuted myself to death by accident. I'm not proud of it. And the lesson I learned from this, the quick lesson, and more of which I dive into the book, is I should have hired an electrician for that work. I was trying to do things by myself, and I did not hire the professional, and I almost died because of that decision. And so I go into the book, all the other cool things in my life where I have decided to hire professionals, whether it's a personal trainer, business coach, all across random areas. Well, definitely electrician, handyman, also down to snow removal and mowing grass. It's just, I've really kind of become I guess you could call it the CEO or the professional, utilizing professionals. And so I would say that book is coming out. I will figure out a way to get links or resources to you and to the on the recording. But that's the moral of the story is hire professionals to do work that requires professionals.
I like it. Do you have a title for the book yet?
The working title is The Laws of Medicine.
Okay.
So it's largely geared towards entrepreneurs in healthcare.
Okay. I like it. We'll get into the show notes. If nothing else, we'll get your information in the show notes so people can follow you. And then when the book comes out, we'll make sure to amend those show notes with anything you've got relative to the book as well. Cool. So I thank you for your time, David. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and I look forward to this continued relationship.
Yes. Thanks, Russ. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
So that's a wrap for this episode of Legacy Unscripted. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't just sit on it. Take some action today to build your future. Make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who may need to hear it. And if you've got a story to share or you want to just connect, you know where to find me. Until next time, keep it real, keep it bold, and keep living your legacy.